Welcome, good folks, to another episode of The Grace of Men, part of Beyond the Algorithm. And I'm your host, Victor Vincian. And today I have special guest, Corwin Melvin, the author of Just a Dad and Surviving Youth Sports. So I love to highlight Black authors, Black fathers, and I want to give you the floor and give you a chance to go ahead and introduce yourself.
Well, that's great. So I'm Corwin Melvin, from Baltimore, born and raised in the city. Uh, Spent 21 years in the Air Force serving this country, where they set me up for the rest of my adult life. I was an intel analyst in the military, kind of like you. That laid the groundwork for me to be able to raise my sons as a single father, and to just continue on and getting close to where I can retire and put it all down and just be thankful for all of the things that took me from this poor kid in the projects to where I am today. So, thanks
All
for
right.
having me. I appreciate it.
Yes, sir. Oh, yeah. I'm definitely glad to have you here. So I was very intrigued at the story, because the read ahead that I had a chance to study and look at. Oh man, we lost him already. So I don't know if he can still hear me, but in the meantime, let's see. We'll get back to this in a second. But so I had a chance to meet Mr. Corwin Melvin, and I was intrigued by his book that he wanted to discuss. I'm sure he'll be back up in a second. And I wanted to be able to highlight his work and give him a chance to speak to you guys about what his life is like as a single father. Because I think single fathers need to be highlighted more, because we're all hearing about the single parent struggle so much, and there's a lot of statistics and conversations that surrounding the effectiveness of a two parent home versus a single parent home versus a single father versus a single mother. So it was very important to me to give the floor an opportunity to someone is actually living it in the meantime, right? So in the meantime, while we get ready to hear from Mr. Corwin, I will be here to entertain you and just let you guys know that I really appreciate the support from the platform, everything that you guys have been doing to show love and and be consistent in making things happen. But I will get to that shortly because I don't have the sandbag anymore now that I got the guy up here.
Hey, I apologize. I
That's it.
apologize for that. Had
Hey
some
man,
technical difficulties.
hey, it's
Um,
part of it, man. We're not professionals. I tell people all the time, this is something that I know how to do. This is not the thing that I'm good at.
right.
You know. So when stuff like this happens, improvisation is necessary.
Absolutely. You got to keep it
So
moving.
right. So I want you to talk about your book and then bring the audience up to speed about what they need to know about you in this book right here. And tell your story, man. Today is your platform. You get to warm up the audience over here because they've never seen you. And I want to make this a regular thing. So
Okay,
let's go.
for me, I'll start from the beginning. Born and raised, in the project, single mom, dad down in the home. Just my mother, me and my brother, my brother and my sister. So raised, we didn't have a whole lot. But we always felt like we had everything we needed.
Hmm.
So being raised by a strong mother, she kind of kept me, on the straight and narrow. I come from one of those neighborhoods where a lot of kids don't make it out. So I was blessed to just have just enough discipline, to be able to listen when I needed to listen, and sit down when I needed to sit down. So was able to, get through high school, did fairly good. One of those things, school was so easy that I never learned how to study, never really learned how to manage my time. So now I go to college. It's a different story when you don't have somebody, standing over top of you telling you to do your homework, get up, go to class, and if you don't learn those skills, you struggle. And one of the biggest reasons why boys have the lowest graduation rate in college is because they don't learn how to manage their time, they don't learn self-discipline, and they don't learn how to study.
Hmm.
So if you don't learn those things and you get to school, you struggle. and a lot of us don't make it, and I was one of those. I got the little letter from the administration saying, hey, maybe you should find something else to do. The school thing is not working out. So that same day I walked down to a recruiting office downtown in Baltimore. Walked in, first door I went into, it was a Navy recruiting office. Saw a big old aircraft carrier sitting out in the water. Walk right back out. Not my thing. I saw that water and I just knew that was not the place I needed to go. So I walked into a Marine recruiter's office. They know how to make you feel like that's the place you need to be.
Right.
They're so gung ho and hoorah. You just go for it. So I was going into the Marine Corps. A couple of days later, I come into the office that the recruiter wasn't there. So the Air Force recruiter said, "Why don't you come here? Let me talk to you." The rest is history. So the best decision I ever made in my life. I had a great recruiter. He saw my ASVAB scores and said, "Hey, you want a job where you can get a top secret security clearance, and you can learn something that if you got on 4 years, you can get a decent job." So he steered me in the right direction, and it worked out perfectly. So
Man.
got
Man.
married early, got married too young, you
Hmm.
know, way too young, and I tell folks, age and maturity are not the same thing.
Yep.
I was 24, she was 21, and there was no way in earth we should be married, but
Yep.
here I am, young and dumb. I'm in the Air Force. I'm stationed 20 minutes from my mother's house. I get an assignment to Germany, and I'm knucklehead. I think that wouldn't it be great if we got married and we just went and hung out in Germany together. So we get married. Mistake. Um, 3 or 4 months later, that assignment got canceled. So now we're just married. With no with no clue what we're doing,
Yeah.
no idea what we're doing. So of course that's a struggle. Start off financially, it's a struggle. We don't really get along because we don't really know each other very well. But for
Hmm.
some kind of way we stay married. So so we go through this thing. Um, 20 years later, no, probably about 17 years later, whatever. I'm getting towards the end of my Air Force career. This thing is not really going all that well.
Hmm.
At this point, we have 3 kids together.
Yep.
So now the decisions you make when you have children involved are a lot tougher than they are when it's just you and this other person. So for me, it was a struggle because not having my father in my life, there was no way I was gonna not have my sons, not be there for them as much as I
Correct.
could possibly be. So, society tells us that black men can't get their kids, black men can't raise their kids, black men are absent, so most guys feel like they don't have an opportunity, they don't have a chance going into court. So a lot of men give up before they even get there. But some the ones who fight, the ones who present themselves the right way have a chance. So for me, once I talked to a few different attorneys. One told me, he said, just because things appear to always go one way doesn't necessarily mean it's going to go that way for you. So if you want to fight for your sons, I think you should, because why not? You have everything, you're providing everything that they need. You have everything in place for them. So that was the one person that said, "Hey, you can do this." And that was all I needed. Right. So, and a big part of my book is that fight for custody, learning the process, and how I managed both raising my kids through that process, how I managed, just dealing with the system in two
Hmm.
different jurisdictions, 2 different courts. You're talking about social services, investigations, guardian ad litem for the kids, and all these other things that go along with, just getting custody of your children. So a big
Yeah.
part of my book is about that fight, and just telling guys, you don't have to give up without a fight. And if everybody's not wired to be a full-time parent, but we can all want more time with our kids. So
Yeah.
there's a way to do that. So I talk about how you can get more time even if you don't get full custody. There's a way to present yourself. So I talk through that, and throughout my book I offer lessons. So lessons from growing up in the neighborhood, how to survive that environment, how to make good decisions, how to surround yourself with people that are like-minded people who are headed in the right direction, how to avoid those pitfalls that a lot of folks fall to, especially younger people, all the way
Hmm.
through in the military. Dealing the first opportunity for me to really be around strong men and strong leaders was when I went in the military. So that's why I say that whole experience changed my life, and
Yeah.
that helped me grow as a man and as a person.
You appreciate that, man. That is a good segue into everything that we got going on here. Because one of the things that I've always said is that a man's arrival, being a black man in in America, there's like no what's the word I'm looking for? There's like no ceremony to bring, to capture your arrival to manhood. You know, like if you don't join the military or go to prison, or and I say confinement, and I say that very lightly because there's very few things that can actually test your discipline, because that's what life is. That's what I
Right.
think. You have to have something to measure your response to stress and adversity, right?
Right.
And I think that's really easy for us to say, because you have to be trained to understand these things. Training is necessary for all things that to be understood, right? And and it makes me think of like certain questions. Like I'm gonna pop some questions up here periodically. We kind of got you on the hot seat today.
I don't have a problem with
All right, cool.
that.
All right, so I'm gonna throw a question up here real quick, and we're gonna highlight it so everybody can see it. Um, let's see if it'll get it to come up here. All right, there we go. Wherever it's at, is it showing up? There we go. Appreciate you, man, Hatter, for the support on the channel. Here we go. What was your initial reaction when you realized you'd be raising your children alone? That says child, but children. And how did it change your view of manhood or responsibility?
Well, for me, I never thought that I would ever not have my sons.
Hmm.
So I was always of the mindset that they were always going to be with me. Whether or not she was with me or not, they were always going to be with me. So it wasn't really a change. We never, my routine never changed. All the things that I did when we were a couple, I did when she was gone. I was the one that was doing a lot of the stuff with the daycare, a lot of stuff with school. I was the one that was doing all of these things. All my kids play sports. So we in and out of the gym every day. So I was the one already doing this stuff. So for me, it was actually easier because now I don't have to worry about what this other person is doing. Because all I knew as all I could really count on was me. So now I don't have to wonder whatever else is going to be going on, or you're going to be available for this, or I need you to do that. I already knew it was all on me. So it just made it that much easier. And my sons were 4, 7, and 10 when I separated, so they were young. So you're talking about one in daycare, one in elementary school, one in middle school, and then just that whole transition through. Um, it was I don't want to say it was easy, but it felt pretty normal. So it didn't feel like I was doing anything special, and that's why the title of my book is Just a Dad, because I was just doing what I was supposed to do. It
Yeah,
was nothing special. It was just me being a father.
gotcha. Okay. I'm pulling up to the next question. You're gonna see them pop up on the screen
Hmm.
as you see them.
Now I'm a little older than you now, so this font is kind of small.
Okay, that's why I'm reading it out to you. I already
I
saw you
appreciate
leaning back.
that.
I got you. So here's the question: what's been your biggest challenge as a single father, emotionally, financially, or socially?
um, Probably emotionally, because when you're dealing with three other humans, you're dealing with three different personalities. So you have to communicate three different ways because they don't all take your word the same way. So the challenge is, how do I relate to this person? This 4-year old. How do I relate to this 7-year old? How do I relate to this 10-year old in a way that it's come across as loving, nurturing, caring, and still, maintaining discipline.
Awesome. I like that, man. That's let's see. Got another question, man. I got
Well, I
you on
can
the
touch
hot
the other
seat.
parts of that question too, if you want me to.
Oh, okay, yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Okay.
This
So,
is your floor. This your floor, man.
okay. So financially, I've been pretty blessed. When they were young and I was going through all of the divorce stuff, I was still in the military. But once I got out the military, I've been blessed with the right jobs. So financially, it wasn't as big of a struggle. Even though I had three dudes, 3 kids. My two of my sons are 6'10". So you're talking about
You got some hoopers.
size 14, 15 tennis shoes every 3 months. So you're talking about all of these things. So like I said, my decision, the decision to go in the Air Force was the best decision I ever could have made. That recruiter, I owe that guy a debt of gratitude because he put me in a position, to be able to raise my sons, essentially by myself because, I was at a point where my ex didn't have to even pay child support, so it was all on me, you know.
Man,
Yeah,
look,
yeah. So then, I mean, that's just is what it was. So, and my thing is this: should no court or a judge have to tell you that you should support your kids? You know,
yeah.
you
Mhm.
know that that's your obligation. So nobody should have to tell you that. So that's a whole nother story. That's another book. How to deal with relationships with difficult people. And how to still come out of it sane with your sanity. And your emotionally intact and those kinds of things. But
Mhm.
so that's that was neither here nor there. It was kind of it's one of those things. If you don't provide anything for your children, then you don't have a voice in my house. You don't get to decide anything because you're not helping me do any of this stuff. So that
Yeah,
was that. And then
come on.
socially, it's hard to date when you got 3 kids. So especially 3 young kids.
Put that in
So
perspective, from a man's point of view to, like when we talk about single mother conversations, occupy a lot of the social media space, right? Talk from obviously from your point of view as a single father. What's dating like? So we can kind of compare the two, and so because I like compare and contrast.
right. So it's very similar. When you don't have time, you don't have time, whether you're the man or the woman. So dating is tough. But I knew that, that was a part of the part of the deal when I accepted that responsibility. So early on, I would tell people I met somebody, say, hey, I'm very busy, I have 3 kids, so I don't have a lot of time, so if you require a lot, then I'm probably not the person for you because I'm just not going to be available and you need me to be available. So there was a big part of that where I wasn't, I didn't really date anybody really seriously. So I wasn't in any real long-term relationships, but so that's how that was, until later on when they got older and then I had more free time and then, they could do their thing and, they were older. But when they were young, yeah, I was just, it's just tough, so it's the same as it is for single moms. It's tough when you have small kids, and especially if it's just you and small kids,
Yeah.
but that's just a part of it. That's a responsibility you accept, and you just make the most of it.
Okay. Well, man, I appreciate that right there. And move on to question 2. How do you balance discipline and emotional connection as both protector and nurturer?
Well, the best part of discipline and the best way to manage discipline and your children is to start early. So you teach those lessons and those boundaries when they're 2, 3, and 4, then you don't have to slap them upside the head when they're 15, 16, 17. So you establish those lines.
Yeah.
You establish that you're always going to be their father. You're not going to be their friend. You're not going to be their buddy. You can love each other, you can hang out, and you can do things together, but there's a line that's always there. So you have to establish that line early so that they understand that, and then there's never a question later on. So a lot of times, I talk to a lot of single women or whatever with kids and with sons, and I tell them, say, all of those little things that you think are cute now aren't gonna be cute when he's jumping out your window, or yelling at you or cussing you out, this, that, and the other. So you have to get them early. You have to, when they're in there 2, 3, and 4, and they're showing off, you got to get them, and we all know what that means. You got to get them early,
Yeah.
because you don't want to have to be standing face to face with this dude who is your size later on,
Right. And
so.
I was on a TikTok live earlier today, and guy had a prompt where it was talking about how come single father children raised by single fathers turn out to have less issues than was similar to the two-parent home structure versus the single mother children. And one of the main issues that kept getting discussed was discipline. Um, but they were talking about discipline as a form of correction, whereas like discipline is a way that you think and live and move every day. You either discipline or undisciplined in what you do. So
Right.
like when you have schedule, staying consistent, adherence to time, adherence to circumstance, maintaining your emotional composure. All of that is a form of discipline, or is a sign of disciplined thinking. So what you just said kind of captured everything that I was talking about earlier in that particular live. So man, hey, look, I know it's not even easy to do it either. So man, hats off to you, man. You
I
dead on.
appreciate that.
Yeah,
But
man.
yeah, yeah. I mean, the thing about it is, it's a learn when you haven't had that in your life. Like I didn't have my father. You're learning together. I put in my book. Me and my son, we kind of grew up together.
Yeah,
So he was like the experiment. I'm learning how to be a father. With him.
yeah.
So there are things that I know I didn't necessarily get right, but they were always done with love. So I always did the best that I could and made the best decisions I could make. Nobody is perfect, so you're gonna make mistakes, but as long as you make those mistakes, and if the foundation is me trying to be the best father I can be and do the best thing that I can do for you, and there's love behind it, then you can move on from those things. And they aren't damaging,
No.
because kids learn how to relate, how to communicate from you. So they learn how to deal in relationships from you. So if you're not a communicator and you're not talking through these things with them, who are they going to learn it from? How
Who
are they
would
going
have
to learn how
learned?
to resolve these things and work through these things if they don't learn it from you? You much rather learn these lessons from you than out the street. So it's better to like I said, start early and then just be consistent.
Yep,
There's lessons in everything, good and bad.
absolutely. Question number 4. What's something you wish more people understood about single fathers, especially black or minority fathers?
We need a hug too. Sometimes we just want somebody to take us out to dinner. Sometimes we just want somebody to cook us dinner, because it's a struggle, just like it is for women. It's a lot of work. There's a lot of emotions that go into it. There's a lot of energy that goes into it. Sometimes you just want to be able to put your feet up, and relax. So to have somebody that allows you to do that, you relish those moments. You relish those moments.
Yeah, I can understand that. I can see that how that could be very impactful and very empowering if you got it. Because if
Yeah,
you're doing it, if you're making things happen without it, it should only help you when you get it. So,
absolutely.
all
Absolutely.
right,
Absolutely.
let's move on to question 5.
Mhm.
Have you faced any stereotypes or stigma of being a single dad? If so, how did you overcome them?
I don't know if I would say stereotypes, because I think it's really different from being a single dad and a single father. Single fathers are kind of like praise. I get people say, "Oh, you're doing great. You're great. You're great. That's a great thing. You got your kids, this, that, and the other." It's like I'm doing this. I'm doing what I'm supposed to do. I'm doing whatever all these women out here do. There's nothing special about it. I'm just being a parent. So I think men tend to get praised for doing something that they should be doing anyway. You know,
Yeah, basic responsibility for what
Yeah,
you
just
signed
being
up
a
for.
being an adult. You're doing what an adult with kids is supposed to do.
Yeah,
You know.
yeah. You just a dad, right?
Yeah, exactly, and that's why my book is that title.
Hey,
I'm just a dad. I'm just doing what I'm supposed to do. What my mother
so,
did for me, my brother, my sister. You
right.
know, the best that she could do, and that's all I'm doing. That's all I did. It's the best that
All
I
right.
could do.
Let's see here. How do you model manhood for your children, especially if you're raising a daughter or a son alone? Now you don't have any daughters,
I don't have
but
any daughters. I wanted a girl so bad. I had 3 sons. Um, Tried 3 times, and after that third one, it was like, yeah, no, that's it. Um, Let me see, get back to the question. How do you model it? You model it by being consistent. You model it by standing up and taking care of your responsibilities. You set the example. You model it by how you treat the women in your life. How you communicate with them and how you communicate with the people around you. How you carry yourself. So kids are very observant, and they very, they absorb a lot, and they may never say anything, but they pay attention to everything you do. So you may not think that that they're watching you, but you see it all the time. You see on the internet, you see these little kids and they up there dancing like this and they saying all this other stuff. They getting that from the people around them, and
yep,
they think, oh, I don't. How did she get that? Where did she get that from? She's watching you. So if that's the example you want to put out into the world, then that's on you. But for me, if my kids to this day, if my son walked up to you right now, he would look you in the eye, shake your hand, and introduce himself, first name, last name, because that's how he's always done. That's how he's been, that's how he was raised. Be introduce yourself and present yourself as a man, and people will respect that. And like I said, my sons are tall. Like I got 2 6'10", 1 6'6". So when they walk in the room, they automatically get attention. And you hate to say it, but and around a lot of white folks, they're automatically afraid of you if you're a big black man.
yeah,
So you have to present yourself in a way that you maintain your presence, you maintain, who you are, but you still communicate in a way that folks can understand where you are, and they aren't just necessarily intimidated by you. They respect you, because you want to be respected. You don't necessarily want to be feared. You want to be respected.
Yeah.
So,
Okay. We're gonna move on to question 7. What support systems have been most important in your parenting journey?
my mother. My mother was always there for me. When my sons were young, if I needed a break, I could always call my mom's up and have her come and hang out with me for a couple weeks. I could always count on her to pick up the phone if I needed something, had a question about something, a kid thing, and I didn't really understand what I needed to do. I always could pick up the phone. So it's she was always there for me. So it's good to have. It's always great to have at least one person, somebody in your circle that you can always call and count on for not the stuff like not the regular stuff, but stuff that you really need help with. And I got this 4-year old. He's grabbing his mouth. He says this is hurting, this is that and the other. What should I do? Those kinds of things. He said he doesn't feel well, but he can't tell me what it is. What should I do? That kind of stuff. So she was always there for that kind of stuff. So yeah, I lost her a couple of years ago. So that was huge. But yeah, my mom's was there when they were young. So I definitely appreciated her having her in my circle.
Man, oh man, condolences, man. I know what it's like
Thank you.
when you actually lose a parent and it hits different, and especially when they're an integral part of what you do every
Absolutely.
day. So
Absolutely.
yeah, man.
Thank you.
Yeah. Let's see here. Number 8. How has being a father changed your relationships with women, romantically, socially, or spiritually?
Well, I guess one thing is, I never really presented a lot of women around my sons. So if they saw me with somebody, they knew it was somebody that was really close to me that I really cared about. So for that, I just tried to separate those things. Because like I said, when you if you've got a bunch of women around your kids, they're gonna have a bunch of women around. They're not gonna respect women. So
Yep.
I limited their exposure to the people that I dated. If it was somebody I was just hanging out with, they never met them. If it wasn't somebody that I felt like we were gonna have something long term, then yeah, they never met them. So I just kind of kept those two separate. And then as they got older, then I met a couple people and I thought that maybe this could be something long term. Those things didn't necessarily work out. But then 2 years ago, I met a young lady, and then I realized that hey, this is the one, and we got married in May.
Oh,
So
oh,
things happen when they're supposed to, not always when we want them
congratulations,
to.
man.
Thank you, man. I've had I
Yeah,
have so many blessings in my life.
yeah,
And she's a blessing. So things happen when they're supposed to. You can't force things. You definitely can't force relationships. But early on, I knew I wasn't looking for anything long term. So I just didn't. Just wasn't looking for it. But once I realized that, hey, I'm getting older. My kids are grown. They're moving on. So now this dating is different. Dating is intentional now. So now I'm looking for the person that fits me instead of somebody that I want to just hang out with. It looks good. I want all of that, but I want somebody who really fits my life. So I was able to find somebody who we really connect, and we got married. So things happen when they're supposed to. And if it's not, if you're in a point in your life where relationship doesn't really fit, then you shouldn't present it that way. You shouldn't date somebody who wants to be married and wants to this, that, and the other. If you know that you don't want the same thing, let that person go and find their husband. You
yeah,
know, don't waste people's time. What I try not to do is waste people's time. I told them up front, hey, I'm very busy. So if you can handle it, then that's fine. But and of course, everybody wants to the guy, oh, he's a single dad, this, that, and the other. They're fine with it until it's a Tuesday night and they want to do something, or Wednesday night and I'm not available. So that's why I made a decision early. Yeah, I should probably not look for anything long term until these guys get a little bit older.
yeah.
So that I can really invest in a relationship. So.
Understood. All right. Number 9. What are you intentionally teaching your children that you didn't receive growing up?
Um, I tell my sons that I love them. I mean, my youngest son still almost calls me every day. So the connection with my kids is, I mean, we were really connected because it was always us. We was always together. Like I said, all my sons play sports, so we were always in the gym. We were always together. So we were really connected. Um, so So I guess let me read that again. Right.
What are you intentionally
Intentionally
teaching?
teaching them.
Yep.
Well, what I tried to teach them, I think I did a good job of it, is value your relationships. All my sons have been in, they're not out here womanizing. My son's married his girlfriend, they met in college, they've been together 10 years. My middle son, him and his girlfriend been together like 5, 6 years, they live together. My youngest son, he's in college, so he's still doing the school thing. But they're grounded in relationships. They respect women. They communicate. So I think one of the biggest lessons is, just have your personal integrity, self-discipline, and mean what you say.
Man,
So
that's awesome, man. Like that is, I mean, that's a big deal. Yeah, for real. Because the the everything that deals with success and failure, I think the worst wound that you can have is a self inflicted wound. The self inflicted wound is the hardest to recover from because it
right.
has the most guilt, shame, and regret that's assigned with it. For the right reason, man. So, man, kudos to you for what I'm saying,
Awesome.
taking everything that you've experienced and turning it into teachable moments that become tangible successes in your son's lives, man. That's not easy to do for a lot of people, man. It
Thank you.
really
But when you talk about self-inflicted wounds, we've all have some levels of that. The
yeah,
problem with us as Black people is a lot of times we don't heal those wounds.
no,
We take those wounds into the next relationship. We're afraid of therapy, so we won't go talk to anybody about it. So we hold this stuff. It all has to. It's all going to come out eventually. So we think that we're over it, but then something triggers it, and now you're right back into whatever that turmoil or that negative energy is. So a lot of it is understanding that these things have hurt us, and how do we legitimately really heal from these things, and not run from them.
gotcha.
So
Let's see, question number 10. What legacy do you hope your children carry from watching how you have shown up as a father?
I hope they do the same thing. I hope that they raise their children to be strong individuals, and be a to be a positive in society, and not to be a burden. Not to be a burden on themselves, their family, or society. Be positive, and 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 offer something. Offer something to the people around you, and offer something to the world. So
Okay, man. Congratulations, man. You got through the gauntlet pretty good. Got through the gauntlet pretty good, So,
I'm a
um,
talker, so
yeah,
I'm
Th-
fine with that.
that's important though. Like when people want to be on podcasts and they don't want to talk, and that's like it kind of defeats it, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So, so before we were so rudely interrupted by the tech issue at the beginning, I wanted you to talk about this book, man,
Oh
and
my,
about
okay.
both your books. So,
Okay. Okay.
um,
So a big part of this book is just, it started off as just wanting to get a lot of stuff off my chest. A few years ago, a buddy of mine said, "Hey man, you have a story, you should write a book." So I kind of just pushed it off to the back, whatever. And then when I met my wife now, she mentioned it a year or so ago and said, "So when are you gonna start?" So I started writing my book last March, and I was done by the end of the year. My first book, I never written one before. So I basically told the story of me growing up in the projects, single mom, all the way through, failing in college, going in the military, getting married way too young, having 3 kids, and now, being a dad with no model, um, to look back at, and, with no real guidance, and learning on the fly, just wanting to do the best that I could for my sons. So I talk through all of that in my book. And then on the other side of that, I talk about dating intentionally, not wasting people's time if you're not really serious, and just trying to make the right decisions, surrounding yourself with good people, keep a tight circle. My circle of
mhm,
friends is in one hand. There's only so many people you can call in the middle of the night and say, "Hey, I need help."
yeah,
So those are the people you want in your circle. Everybody else is an acquaintance or somebody you know, but my circle and my sons just are the same way. Keep a tight circle, because you want people that you can count on. So I talk through that. I also talk about I had an experience working for as a contractor for this government agency. Had a had a racist boss, who just felt like she could treat black people a certain way. So that whole experience, and going through EEO, and and talking about just how to deal with the toxic people, how to communicate with folks you can't stand, and how to make decisions, how to make the right decisions even when you're in an environment that's not beneficial to you, and when to leave, because one, for me, I'd rather leave too soon than too late. So if I'm in a situation where I don't feel like it's beneficial to me, I'm not gonna risk my health, my career, my family,
You
dealing
got
with
something to
folks.
lose. Yeah. You got
Exactly.
something. You got something
Right.
to lose.
Exactly. So I'm always going to make the best decision for my family. It all comes back to, doing what's best for my family. So just dealing in that situation with this person who just was trying to just basically ruin my career. So how I made it out of that. And now, the blessing in it is, I have a full-time work from home job. My company's in Colorado, so they're 2 hours away. So I really only have like 4 hours that overlap with them. So my work life is excellent. I don't have to
Yeah.
leave the house. My wife teleworks, so she's here. So you got to take what they say, take lemon, make lemonade. Take
Yeah. Yeah.
take a
Yeah.
lemon to make lemonade. So make the best out of these types of situations. I talk about all of that stuff. I talk about this last election, just how do you deal with people who make decisions that are against their own best interests? How do you
Right.
have conversations with people who make just these irrational decisions and still not slap them?
Yeah.
So just even though you want to, so
Yeah.
just talking through some of that. So it's basically a lot of lessons in how to manage these different situations,
Hmm.
how to manage these different types of people, how to communicate with three different people in your house. How do you really communicate and show each of them that you love them equally, because all kids think that, oh, he likes me more than this, and he loves me more, and this, that, and the other.
Competition.
Yeah, yeah, but it's not even about that. It's about who
Hmm.
needs more attention, who needs more of these different things. So just trying to get them to understand that stuff. So I talk about how to manage a lot of that stuff. So I think it's a
Hmm.
it's a good book for it's a great book if you're a young dad. It's a great book if you're a young person just really getting started. It's a great book if you're going through fighting for custody, fighting for visitation, because that's a big part of it is fighting that custody battle, talking through all of these different agencies, how to communicate with all of these different agencies, and how to deal with this person that you don't love anymore. How to communicate with this person. How to still be respectful, when you're talking to your kids about this person, because you hear a lot about toxic relationships and how parents try to turn the kids against the other parent and all those kinds of things. How to not to fall for that, and how to always put your kids first. And when you even when you no longer get along with this person, how to always put their feelings, ahead of this relationship that's no longer there.
Yeah.
So a big part of it is just like I said, just being a dad and raising kids and fighting through that
Okay.
custody and stuff. So there's a
Okay.
lot of lessons about that kind of stuff in there.
Gotcha. Hey, I want to get a hold to the audience for everybody else that's watching, for everybody that's on YouTube. Thanks for showing up. We will get to the questions in the chat shortly. But in the meantime, I would appreciate if you guys go ahead and like, share, and subscribe, and make sure that you are following the Beyond the Algorithm playlist that's on YouTube. And you can always hit the super chat up for you YouTube supporters. A shout out to my man uh, Ron that came up here and blessed the platform for a second.
Awesome!
Shout out to him, you know what I'm saying? YouTube should that are watching should follow suit over on the super chat if you want to support the channel. But in the meantime, we will continue because we want to hear about the other book too.
Oh my
You know,
goodness.
so here we go.
So surviving youth sports, it's me as a dad, just giving folks the no holds barred truth about being a sports parent. Because a lot of times when you're in it, you don't want to say the wrong thing because this coach or that organization, you don't want to turn people against this, that, and the other, your kids. But I'm grown, all my kids are done, so I can say what I want to say. So
Mhm.
and so in my book, I have a chapter on single moms, single moms in youth sports, and how coaches and organizations can take advantage of women, to get access to their sons. So there's a chapter that talks about, how to recognize, how to identify a good coach, good organization, how to identify one that's not good, a place that you probably shouldn't take your son or you don't want to be involved with. So there's a lot about that because there's a lot that goes on with these coaches and moms, take advantage of moms and this and the other. So there's a chapter about that. See, these are things that folks don't normally want to talk about. I talk about daddy ball, coach got two sons, got a son on the team. The son gets to play the whole game, gets to make every mistake. Your kid gets out there, he makes one mistake, he gets yanked out of the game.
Mhm.
So I talk about, how toxic that can be in sports and especially youth sports because you can traumatize kids. You can really turn kids away from the game when they don't feel like they have a fair opportunity or fair chance to contribute and to play. So I talk about that. I talk about these parents coming out of the stands, fighting coaches and referees, just behavior of parents in the stands, so there's a chapter on just, you know, being aware of what's going on around your surroundings, understanding, the dynamics of fans and parents, and understanding when you need to move, or when you need to separate yourself from a situation, when you need to separate yourself from a program, because there are coaches out here smoking weed, showing up high, and they're coaching kids, so how to deal with that type of environment and how to when to get your kid out of it. So I talk a lot about, just those kinds of things. And I also talk about I had 3 kids. So I talk about college recruiting, unscrupulous coaches, the transfer portal, how coaches use your kid up, they get injured and kick them out of school. Basically, they'll never tell your kid to leave, but they'll make it so uncomfortable for him that he doesn't really have a choice. So I talk about just that whole thing with college coaches and this and the other. So there's a lot in there. I talk about the difference between public school and private school, because I've had my sons have played at both, and the environment, the difference between the two, and some of the best coaches that my kids have been around have been public school coaches, even though the private schools get all of the money and all of the hoopla and they get all the best kids. The coaches who really care about your kids are in public schools. They're the ones that are in school. They're the ones that are telling your son to go do his homework. They're the
Mhm.
ones that are there every day when he needs somebody to like encourage him and push him along. So I have a lot of respect for public school coaches. Um, a lot of private school coaches are just like college coaches. They're just looking for their next job, and they're just trying to stack wins. So they're not necessarily concerned about your child or his development. A
They
lot of
care
them
more
want
about that
kids that
work
are
rate.
already ready. Yeah, they're just like college coaches. A lot of them want kids that are already ready. They're not really trying to develop kids. So a lot of kids get pushed to the side, and then you see a lot of kids that develop late, and now you're like, well, how did they miss on this kid? Because they didn't invest in him when he was younger, because he wasn't good then. So now he
Mhm.
worked on his own, and now he's good. Now you coming back, and now you want him. So there's a lot of times you'll see that. They shun a kid. Kid grows 6 inches in high school. Now he's 6'10". Now everybody wants him. So all of these coaches who wasn't interested in him when he was like 7th, 8th grade, now they in your face talking about, oh, we love your kid. So how to just sort through that type of you know fake love, for your kids or whatever, to make the best decisions for your kids. So
Yeah.
surviving youth sports is about telling stories that folks don't talk about because nobody wants their kid to not, to get pushed on the bench or this, that, and the other. But now, my kids are old enough that I can say what I want to say. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I put it all in this book.
Oh, that's dope, man. Which is a good segue to
I need 1 second though.
okay, take a
Okay, one
second.
second. Yeah, I just need 1 second.
Yeah. So to you guys that have been supporting the channel, I greatly appreciate you. Give yourself a round of applause. You've been very, very supportive in a lot of different ways and been real consistent about engagement, especially on Facebook and other platforms that we on too. So now that we got our guests back up here, I wanted to. Here we go. Technical
No, we're good.
issue.
No, we're good. I didn't want my phone to die on me, so I wanted to plug it
Okay.
in. That's all.
Okay. Good. I wanted to ask you this since you brought up the youth sports thing, right? And at the top of my list and everything that I was thinking about when I saw this book was what are your opinions on well, you spoke a lot about being a father in managing kids in youth sports. What are your opinions on like the Sanders family, the Ball family, the Brown family that's put out? It's been a lot of men being with their sons and watching them, like make this generational turnover from the NFL to the NBA to, across the spectrum. How do you feel about that whole change? And you're really participating in it now,
I think it's great. I think
Yeah.
anytime you have a father involved in his kid, that's a wonderful thing. I think some guys are a little bit more flamboyant with it, a little louder, a little more,
Hmm.
a little more shiny.
Yeah.
So some are more, but there are just as many parents who are providing that same level of support that you never hear about.
Right.
So I'm all for it. A parent can never be too supportive of their kids. So do what you got to do. And if you get two or three kids in the NBA or a couple kids in the NFL, you already winning.
Yeah. Yeah. Hey, because like what I'm watching in my point of view, narratives are dying now. Like this whole narrative the that the person that's getting drafted is coming from like this, like this bastion of a situation where the parents aren't there. They
Right.
got like that Michael Orr blindside type of
Right.
situation. That narrative is like dying, because you're starting to see more both parents be involved
Right.
in the draft and the process. You're starting to see generational talent starting to come out, and I think that we're in the middle of a great wave of like mature men having conversations about this is what we produce, in
Right.
general. This is the mindset you're passing on your mindset. That's like
Right.
the real inheritance, I think.
Right.
So
I mean,
what you what
I
you've
gotta,
been
I gotta,
doing
I
is
gotta,
that.
I can add something to that.
Go
I
ahead.
think,
Yeah.
I think a part of that is um, not just a mindset. I think one society is having to accept something that for years they say we didn't do. Black men don't support their kids. Black men don't do this. Black men don't do that. So now every time you turn on the TV, you see a kid and his dad. His kid and his dad. Kid and his dad. And now they have a problem with that.
Mhm.
Now, why is his father there? Why is his father? It's all
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
So you really can't win for losing.
Can't wait for losing.
You can't win for losing. So I say be there and show out because that's that they want you to be there. You've earned it. They've earned it. So be there and show out. So society is always gonna try to present us as less than what we are. So we just have to keep challenging that narrative, and let them eat it.
Yep. Can't please everybody.
No, you don't have
You
to
never
please any
will.
of them.
You
The
don't
only
have to
people you
please
have to
anybody.
please are the ones in your house.
No, come on. Yeah, like I say all the time, I don't have to the only people I have to be concerned about are the people that respect me. That's
Right.
it. Everybody else, nobody else matters.
No.
Like, because being like-minded is sharing, like mutual respect for one another also in
Right.
general. The
And
minute that they get
celebrating
out
each other's wins.
it's exactly, that's it. So yeah, I definitely wanted to bring that up and see how you thought about it, because like when you're in the trenches with this stuff, nobody really sees all of the work that gets put in, all of the mentorship and everything else. Because I think you embody what I believe fathers should be,
Right.
because there's a part where you go from like the parent and nurturer, what I'm saying, like trying to herd cats is what we used to say
Right.
in the military, right?
Right.
To, getting them to adhere to discipline, order, and structure, so they start working on autopilot. They don't need you to do every
Right.
single thing, so they can be autonomous and still be responsible at the same time. But you also don't want to burn the bridge with them emotionally, so you can remain the primary mentor in their life if they need to talk to
Right.
somebody, outside of the regular course of business, outside of what they want to do. So there's a lot of implied self-work that needs to happen in order for you to be effective that way.
Right.
And I think that when you start writing books, that's you actually releasing all of the negativity, because you're making it make sense and you're making it come back to you in a positive way.
Right. Oh, it's
So
therapy. It's therapeutic.
it is therapeutic. Yeah, it is therapeutic. So like like I'm an author myself. So when I started discovering how much more effective it was in lieu of therapy, well, in addition to it just adds more context to how you think, because
Right.
you're really testing your brain power to stay consistent and complete something. That's really what it is. It shows
Right.
what you care about.
Yeah.
And if you care about letting um, turning that story into something that other people could benefit from, it adds value to your life, man. So
I agree.
uh,
I
let
agree.
me get to the comments, okay?
Sure.
Uh, Herbert Lewis says parents are the template for what kids learn and are taught.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Yep. So, you got anything else you want to add
And
to
that's
that?
both good and bad.
It's both good
So
and bad. Yeah,
yeah,
that's
so
why.
you want that template to be something that they can, that's a positive for them, that they can take into the world, and be
Right.
positive.
So as men that have similar professions, right? I've all one of the things you have to accept in the intelligence field is that both sides exist,
Yep.
the good and the bad, and they're both good and bad for
Depending on your
reasons
perspective.
from exactly right. So I I started doing all of my last book that I wrote, Accountable Masculinity, which
Okay.
is what we talk about. Hey, go get the book. I'm gonna plug my book too. So um, I started I started dissecting conversations that I would see on social media involving gender conflict because I've been studying conflict the last 22 years. So I can't turn that part of my brain off. It interests me. I like to know why things started
Right.
and what's the source of it, because why things started and the source of it is not the same thing.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So the source is is based on the conditioning of the people that participate in the activity. Why are these people in constant conflict with one another, right? So in a gender war conversation, you're going to have people with similar outcomes always in conflict with each other. People that have positive outcomes with similar results have a different upbringing also. So the two-parent home people are more likely to reproduce with people from two-parent homes. There's
Right.
going to be some exceptions, but by and large, the same thing applies to the single-parent home folks. So if you get two people born, raised in single parent homes without models for a father, you're going to have eternal conflict until both people accept that they've been raised without fathers. Because a man raised without a father has got the same emotional discipline on a lot of
Absolutely.
levels as a woman raised without a father.
Yeah.
So a lot of people have been trying to figure out why their relationships do and do not work, and that conversation gets presented to them, they realize that the best relationship that they probably fumbled came from somebody telling them what to do because they hadn't been told what to do, and they're like, man, because they didn't see being told what to do as correction and love. They saw it as control and
Right.
manipulation. So that variable has a big play in the thing. So yeah, parents are definitely the template for what kids learn and talk because they take that into their other relationships.
Yeah.
Appreciate you, Herbert, for that. Yeah, that question. Uh, I think he was talking about single fatherhood. He said it's seen as an unnatural role for men to feel alone. When you were talking about, hey, I'm just a dad. I'm just taking care of my kids like I was supposed to. They're mine. So they see single fathers as I guess exceptions. What do you think about that?
Well, you see it a lot. You see it a lot more now. Because a lot of courts that who would traditionally would not give a man an opportunity, are starting to open up to fathers. So you see a lot more, and then you see a lot more men who are willing to fight the fight. Who are asking for more. And like I talk about in my book, even if you aren't built for full custody, you can have more visitation with your kids. Your kids may need as much time as you with you as you can get. So it's how you present yourself, to these courts,
Hmm.
because and you have to have a plan, you know, you have to have a
Yep.
plan. So if you walk into any court in the country nowadays, if you walk into the court and you have a plan spelled out on how you're going to spend this time and how it's going to be positive for your kids, more times than not, they're gonna go with it. They're gonna give you that opportunity. But it's how you present yourself. You can't walk into a court and you have no idea where your kid goes to school at. You don't know any of their teachers. You don't know what their grades are. You don't really know anything about their day to day life. Then how are you gonna tell a judge that, hey, I want more time? So you have to be engaged. You have to be involved, and you have to spend time getting to know and learn your kids, know your kids. So it's not foreign to you. You know.
Yep. Let's see here. Do you think it was marrying too young or marry the incorrect person too young?
Well, usually when you're married too young, you don't know if it's the right person or not. I know people who got married when I went in the military. I mean, 19, they got married and they still married today. So you don't know. You hope that you're marrying somebody who is like-minded and you're growing together and you're going to go in the same in a direction where you both can grow and bloom together and you have kids and all of these things. Just and then the big party in the sky and everything goes well. That's what everybody wants. But for me, I knew I was young and immature. So
Mm,
that going into it, that was already a recipe for disaster.
gotcha.
So getting married for the wrong reason.
Yeah.
But if you're grounded and you're mature in who you are and you guys are mature together, then it can work. But if you're
Okay.
either one of you guys is immature and irresponsible, it's not going to work. And that's where we were.
Okay. Well, I want to give you my grading criteria before we get out of here because this has been a very productive conversation, man. You had a lot to share. This has been a lot of healthy conversation. I wanted to go longer, but I don't want it to go longer because you want to leave something to come back to. But this is my grading system for the guys that come on here, right? All right. So, rule number one of accountable masculinity is men focus on men. Personal accountability standards amongst reasonable men without degrading women to improve our society. So, that's what you've been doing with your own self, the work that you've done on you, and you've instilled that into your kids. And I can see the how much further it's going to go, man. So, you get a round of applause on that one, too. Um,
Appreciate it.
the the book itself is centered on this right here. Rule number two: you don't argue with women. So you've been using the court system to your advantage to help maintain your placement in your kid's life, so you can show up. And that's how you have to use the court system to mitigate this, because you're not going to get any progress but to help your kids by arguing with the woman that you made your kids with. So
Can I give you a quick story about that?
go ahead. Yeah.
Okay, so when I petitioned for custody of my kids before
Hmm.
I was even divorced. So they've always been with me. So when she left the house, they were still with me. So when I went to court for the actual custody, I sit there for 45 minutes and hear all these negative things about me. Some of these things I'd never heard before. So I'm just sitting here taking this beating. Her and her lawyer or whatever. I'm by myself. I don't even have a lawyer. So I took one of my best friends, Dave. He was there with me. He was my witness. So I sit here, I take all of this verbal abuse. The judge, my turn, the judge brings me up. He said, Mr. Melvin, what would you like to offer? And I told him, I said, well, I'm not here to disparage her because I need her to help me raise my sons. I just want the opportunity to be able to do that. And he said, you know what, Mr. Mel, we're gonna give you that opportunity. The boys are gonna be with you. She'll get regular visitation, and then that's how it's gonna be. So we'll write the schedule up, we write the order, and that's how it's gonna be. I was up there 5 minutes, after sitting there going through all of this. So it's just about, presenting yourself. I had everything in place, make sure you have things in order. They were already in school, they were already doing all the things they had been doing. Their lifestyle never changed.
Yeah.
So that consistency was key to helping them get through it because it was hard for them, not having their mother in the house anymore. So it's hard for them.
Yeah.
So and like my oldest son, I put him in therapy for a while because he was the oldest, so he a little bit more about what was going on. So it was tougher for him. So he had some issues he wanted to talk to. He was a little angry. So part of it is recognizing when your kids need help, and understanding that it's not always going to be you that is the one that can help them. So sometimes they need to talk to somebody. So you need to understand when it's more than just, oh, they just mad because they didn't get a toy. Sometimes they really need to talk to somebody. So you have to identify that and get them those resources when they need them. So
All right, man. That's rule number three: decentralized leadership requires knowing when to lead and when to follow. Must avoid misrepresenting fellow men. Although we are not perfect, we must have redeeming efforts. That in itself is exactly what you just explained, beforehand. Because if you would have gone back and forth or done something to misrepresent yourself, you would have taken your opportunities away.
absolutely, no question. And that's what they expect.
That's
So
what
they
they
want to
expect.
see you. They want to see that side of you because that's what they expect. So when you don't give them that, now they're like, oh, this guy's different. So
That-
now I have to treat him a different way.
That's how you
So
get your leverage back.
exactly.
So You're always working from the bottom up anyway.
Yep.
Rule number 4, legacy and equity. Live a life of service towards your community and others. You must be credible and capable of both mentoring and being mentored. You must be receptive and coachable. I think that you've nailed all of this right here. You know,
I think I'm doing pretty good so far.
yeah, you're doing real good, man. Hey, if this is the opportunity, like you like, hey, you left something out. This is the time to say it, But I think that you went across every single one of these things that's listed, and this is a short version of it too. But the longer criteria, you nailed that down too.
That's what's up. That's good stuff.
Yeah. And men must exercise sexual discipline to be seen as credible leaders and maximize their opportunities. The way you described your dating preferences and your practices and making decisions that put your sons in front of your immediate romantic needs and social needs, that's what sexual discipline is. Not just because you could, like you said, you made a distinction between what would be short-term and long-term fulfillment,
Absolutely.
and you didn't put your kids on the back burner for a short-term fulfillment.
Exactly.
So because, man, emotions will get people in a lifetime worth of hurt for, for 4 or 5 pumps.
Exactly.
So and I think that is a testament to, like how much more disciplined sexually men are than what we get credit for too. So you understood the severity, what was on the line, you had something to lose, and you made the right decisions and the right choices, man. So as simple as it sounds, if we don't talk about this, nobody knows that we actually think like this, because I think part of the reason why men get dumped into such negative conversations is we're just quiet. Because when you're disciplined and you mind your business, you don't feel a need to go advertise, hey, I'm minding my business. That's like dumb. You know what I'm saying? So but with social media and the way that we communicate today, we're almost doing ourselves a disservice by not having public conversations.
Right.
Because if you don't speak, somebody else is writing the narrative and controlling the narrative to demonize you and just your image,
Right.
And
Absolutely.
all of that amounts to this last acronym that I came up with. This is what you avoid when you follow rule number 5: sudden, sexually undisciplined dating decisions ending negatively. You have done a great job in avoiding all of this.
No question. That's important. That's important for everybody. That's why not having that self-discipline is why there's so many kids out here, running the streets and, knocking people over the head, is because they're emotional, they're undisciplined, and they don't have leadership. So that's what society is fighting against, and that's exactly what my kids would never be a part of. So it's my responsibility to make sure that they do not fall into that, that whole dynamic of these kids out here just running the streets with nothing to offer,
Right.
Just a burden.
Man, look, you've done a great job, man, showing up today. And I must say, like, all men that I've had on the Greatest of Men series, like with conversation, game, like you represent. I'm going in the right direction too.
That's what's up.
So and I think that we can all take each other to different audiences and get greater visibility with these conversations, and we can highlight great men along the way.
Right.
So would you like to leave the audience with some parting thoughts? I would like for you to. So I'm gonna put you up on the stage.
And what I'll say is be the father that your kids need you to be. Be present. They value your time, energy, and effort more than anything that you could buy them. All they want is you. So just be the father they need you to be.
Awesome, man. Awesome. All right. For you guys that have been tuned in and following the content, everything's gonna be available on YouTube. Make sure you guys like, share, and subscribe. You can follow me on Stepdaddy Shop on TikTok. Also, I don't really say that. That's kind of like my covert account where I go out and meet people like Mr. Corwin Melvin that happened today. So yeah, Man, it's been a pleasure. Greatly appreciated. I'll see you backstage, bro.
Can I say one more thing?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So I'm also a writing coach. So I'm open to helping aspiring writers, especially first time writers. So if you're interested in writing your first book, my tagline is because everyone has a story, everyone has a book in them.
Mhm.
You can reach me at launchtheauthor.com. That's launchtheauthor.com. And I'm here to help you tell your story, to write your first book.
As a matter of fact, we got a question from the audience. Herbert, you caught me at a good time. Let me go ahead and show this screen real quick before we get out of here. He said, "Where can we find your books?" And obviously on Amazon. So I'm gonna
No,
pull
no,
it
no,
up.
no, no. Don't go to Amazon.
We'll go to Amazon.
No, 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 no. If
Okay.
you want to purchase one of my books, go to my website. It's
Oh,
corwinmelvin.com.
Corwin. You said
corwinmelvin.com.
CorwinMelvin.com. That's something I got to do too. Get my own website for my stuff as well.
Yep.
So
corwinmelvin.com.
yeah, I'm gonna pull that up. And
Yeah, that way I can get you a signed copy
yep,
of the book, and that's either one.
yep. So you see, everybody in the audience, you guys got it. CorwinMelvin.com, and you see both books are available here. I might have to get
And
with
at the
you.
bottom of that, you see there's a free giveaway there for dads.
Oh, okay,
Free
man,
download for dads.
free download. I see it right
Hmm.
there. Man, look, I like the way you got things set up here. I'm learning something else. You taught me something today for sure. So launch the author, and
That's it.
man, CorwinMelvin.com. That's where you guys need to go. Hey man, you had a great show, man.
Hey, I
This.
appreciate it, man. Hey, if you want, I'm here and I'm available. So anytime, if you want to get on, we can chat. We can chop it up.
Oh, absolutely, man. This has been like I started this because I hear so many conversations around the gender conflict that talk about the patriarchy, and I really believe that we live in a matriarchy
Hmm.
because people complain from a place of privilege in most cases,
Right.
and and so I believe that it's up to us to have that conversation because by the grace of men they get to complain. It is the grace of men that affords people the opportunity to disparage men.
Right.
And I'm not down with being disparaged anymore. I'm not down with watching other men that I know doing well for themselves and taking care of, business with their children, their families, or whatever they're responsible for, because they don't have time to go out and be negative influences on society. They just
Right.
don't.
Right.
So we just need to bring attention to the things that matter, and that's what this platform is about. That's what the Grace of Men is for. And for everyone that's been watching, I greatly appreciate you. Melvin, I see you backstage, and rest of you guys, peace. All right, folks. Appreciate you sticking with me to the end. This has been another episode of Beyond the Algorithm. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe. Go get the book. And most importantly, I will see you beyond the algorithm. That's when life actually happens.